This is not a dream. We are going to install Ironman 4x4 underbody protection on a new 3rd Gen Tacoma. Woo! Installing underbody protection on your truck's actually really easy. The hardest part is just the clearance issue. So if you've got a stock truck, getting the Ironman underbody protection on it's going to be a little close for comfort. If you've got access to a lift, that's the easiest way. If not, and you're doing suspension, put your suspension on first because at least your truck will sit a little bit higher. You can jack your truck up and put it on jack stands, but our truck has Foam Cell Pro suspension on it, so I've got enough room to get me and my creeper on there. Now, depending on what trim package you have on your truck, ours is an SR5. We've got this front, skirt, mud splash guard, splitter, whatever you want to call it, that sits in front of our front little stock skid plate, and it's held on with a bunch of 10 mil screws. You're going to have them along the front under here and then 2 on the back side on each side. So we'll buzz those off just to give us easier access. I hope you're not claustrophobic because it's real tight. All right, we got to get our stock little splash plate off. This thing is really flimsy. It's held on with 4 little 12 mil bolts. You have 2 in the front and 2 in the rear. And what's kind of cool is you can pull the front ones out and it's got little hooks, so they'll hang. So do the fronts first, and when you go to pull the back off, then you basically just have to kind of push, unhook it. The thing will just swing down. Hangs like that. You just push up and over, and it's off. Now we got to pull off these support braces. You've got 2 of them, one on the driver and one on the passenger side. They're 17 mil bolts. These pieces are going to be pulled off. You're not going to use them again. The front skid plate is so thick and heavy duty, it replaces that as a structural piece. Hang on to this hardware too, because we're going to be reusing some of this OEM bolts. So before we go any further on the front plate, I want to jump to the back for a minute and show you this rear bracket. So your underbody protection kit comes with this awesome looking super stout piece. And what this is this fits on the very back protection plate that goes over your transmission, which also has a sweet feature that cups over your crossover exhaust pipe so that if you do hook up on something, you're not going to crush your exhaust. And that's a common problem taco guys have, is when they hook up on something, they wind up pinching their exhaust right down the center line. So this bracket here attaches to this middle cross member, and to get it in there you need a couple pieces. One, you need the bolt, you need the bracket, and you also need this little nut plate here. And it's a plate with a welded nut. To gain access, go up through these access holes here. So you're going to have 2 holes on the front side of your cross member. You're also going to have mirrored on the back the same 2 holes, but don't forget the bracket goes on the front side of that cross member. So to gain access for this backer plate with the nut welded on it, fit the plate so that it's going to sit flush up against the back. You don't want the nut pointing forward, you want the nut pointing back and the nice flush plate pointing forward. And it's a little bit tight, but using your fingers in there, kind of get it fitted. And then what I do is I'll just hand thread one of the bolts into the plate, and that holds it. Then I'll grab the other plate and the other bolt and do the same thing. All right, bolts are held in. Now we're ready to install the bracket. I'm just going to back this bolt out of that encapsulated nut. I'm going to hold the back side of it so it doesn't drop away. And then you can kind of hold everything with your left hand. Grab the bolt through the slot. And if I can get it lined back up. It's a little tricky, but you can do it. There we go. And leave the bracket kind of hanging down because that'll make it easier for you. Now we can go to the other side, pull the bolt, and we can just swing the bracket right up into place. And then just leave it loose until we get ready to put that rear plate on. All right, grab your front plate, and remember when we pulled these bolts out, these 17 mil, you're gonna plug them back in 1, 2, and 3. That fits up just like that. And these are countersunk so that if you do run over something, it's not gonna rip your bolts up. And what's great about the Ironman 4x4 armor is you can see all the mounting areas for your bolts are countersunk or offset, so that when you hit, you know, an obstacle or something, you're not gonna rip up your bolts. It's just gonna slide right over. So it makes it a little bit easier if you have a deep dish socket or even a socket with an extension, then you can kind of get that bolt down in there to thread in. And same thing on this side. Line it up. I'm leaving everything nice and loose just so that we can adjust that plate, because we're gonna have all 3 plates tie into each other. So leaving this stuff hand tight is the way to go. Once it's all aligned in position, then we'll lock it all down. It's hanging, all the bolts are in, it's still loose. We can grab our second plate. Okay, on the second protection plate, you want it so that these front hoops are towards the front, because all 3 of these plates tie together at a 45 angle, which makes it really nice. So again, if you're hitting obstacles and dragging across a log or something, it's just gonna be nice and flush. And it'll just keep, you know, popping over that lip, and you'll slide up and over. These guys here are gonna bolt up in here. And you can tell because we've got this big cutout in this plate to accommodate for this center crossover with, I think that's a jacking point. But yeah, Ironman's engineers did a great job. We've got cutouts for your drain plugs so you can do oil changes without having to rip all this stuff off. Gosh. These are the times when I'm like, being skinny would be potentially really good. So when you set this second plate up there, you can kind of push it up behind the first one and it'll hold in there. Grab your socket and your 17 bolt. Line it up. Get a few threads in. We're good. Actually, I'm using my fat gut to kind of keep the back of the plate up, so yeah, it's kind of nice. Unforeseen benefit. See, watch, it's all mounted in place. Oh, there it fit perfect. All right, real quick, let me just kind of orient us back to where we are under the vehicle. You've got a couple cross members. You've got a front cross member towards the front of your lower control arm. We are now working on this rear cross member. So if you go to the back of your lower control arm, that's the cross member I'm talking about. And the rear of your second piece of armor is going to bolt in like this. So we've included a steel thick spacer puck. Take that bolt, slide it up into the countersunk area, drop your spacer down, and it threads right into there like that. Get a few threads in, and then we can let it hang. Do the other side. All right, now all we got to do is hook up this last third plate to the front of the second. And to do that, we will start on the front of it. You're going to have 4 of these included hardware. Just going to finger tight in 2 of them. And then we can let the plate hang while we go and hook up the back. One of the best features on this underbody protection is this cover for the crossover exhaust pipe here. This is a huge pinch point on these Tacoma trucks. You go over something, go over a log, a big rock, and you end up crushing your exhaust and pinching it, and then you're pretty much done. You gotta, you know, sawzall this piece out if you want to keep moving forward. So Ironman 4x4 and their genius engineers designed this great little cover, so if you are sliding along something, it's going to hit that. It's all gusseted and reinforced. Again, this stuff is like a little bit, it's metric, but it's basically a little on the plus side of 3/16 thick, so super heavy duty. I'll go ahead and finger tight in a couple of these bolts into that bracket that we installed in the front side of our cross member there. We'll leave everything finger tight until we get it all lined up. All right, now that we've got that all tightened up, I'm gonna go back and do the last two front ones. I love it though. This stuff just looks so clean. Clean lines, you've got access holes where you need them, so you can still work on your truck without having to rip all the armor off. But you have enough meat there that's gonna protect all your critical components in your drivetrain. So for the rear plate, there's two ways of doing this. One is you can actually tighten the two 17 mil bolts to the cross member up top before you put this plate on, but you might not get the proper alignment that you need. So the way I like to do it is tighten the plate bolts here to the bracket. That'll suck everything together. Then get yourself a 17 mil socket with a U-joint and a long extension. And what you can do is going at it from the side. Once you get your socket on there, then you can use your left hand and push from underneath and fit it all the way up against that cross member. The whole idea here is, if you do it the other way, you're going to lose all your vertical adjustment, and you want these plates pressed up against the frame of the truck. Because if you tighten them down with the plates hanging, as soon as you go out and rock crawl this thing and land on a rock, it's going to shift. We don't want it to shift. You want it pushed up against the frame, good and tight. And working our way forward, let's now tighten up our second plate, the rear of it. These bolts that had the puck spacers that go into the cross member, we'll do these first. It's a 13. And now we'll tighten up these four here. And we'll just keep working our way towards the front. This is the front of the second plate. It's a 17. Make sure our alignment on this front plate is good left to right, which it looks like it is. And again, go slow, and you can check the gaps. If something looked like it didn't line up properly, just loosen it up and smack it with a hammer. Hit the front. All right, we'll check our alignment one more time. That is flush. Plates are in, they look perfect. Ooh, that was a satisfying thud.